What's up everyone, it's Vixen here with another Path of Exile build guide. Today we're going to be talking about the in-game version of the Earthshatter build I already put a video out for. That one was a league starter that can get you into red maps in under 5 chaos investment. So if you're interested in that, there's going to be a link in the description, but this guide is for the in-game version, so stick around if that's what you want to learn about. We're going to go ahead and roll some gameplay footage in the background so you can see what it looks like in the top tier content, and if it looks fun to you, and if it's something that you'd actually consider playing. And before we get into anything further, if you end up enjoying this guide or any of my other Path of Exile guides, do consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons. This is a newer channel, so every little bit goes a long way and is greatly appreciated. Okay, so at this point I am level 92. I have fully cleared my Atlas for 154 out of 154, and I'm closing in on Awakened level 4. And let me tell you, everything has been super easy mode so far. I very rarely die, and if I do, it's honestly my softcore brain's fault for not paying attention to something. Many people were asking if this is a hardcore viable build, and the answer is absolutely yes, it is. It's super tanky with 6,000 life and anywhere from 20 to 30,000 armor with 6 endurance charges, so the survivability is definitely there. Now at this point I've put in just under 2x in currency into this character, so definitely manageable once you get a 90 plus on your character. With that little extra investment I was able to double my damage and can now comfortably kill juiced up Shaper Guardians no problem. So the damage is certainly there as well, and of course I still feel very tanky with the Juggernaut Ascendancy. All in all, this started as a super cheap league starter build and has been incredibly fun to play and has felt really strong the whole way through. It's definitely been my easiest path to success for a first character in a new league by far. So with all that being said, what we're going to do here is first chat about the passive skill tree, and then the gem setups, and lastly the gear. I also try and keep these relatively short and to the point. I know a lot of experienced players just want to know the path of building link and see what it looks like in action and then just roll with it. And for the newer players, sometimes these long guide videos can feel a bit overwhelming, so I'll try my best to keep everything short and to the point, but enough to where you know everything that you need to get into in-game and have a lot of fun doing so. Alright, so let's jump into it. First off, I'll leave a link in the description to download the Path of Building app, or POB as it's called, so you can have the offline tree planner to go along with this build if you don't already have it downloaded. For the newer players, you'll need to click this Import Export button, then click Import from Pastebin, then copy and paste the POB Pastebin link in the description right here and click Import, and you'll be good to go. And like I said, I won't go crazy in depth here, since that's usually what makes these videos super long. Instead, I'll just go over the highlights for this skill tree. First thing to note is this is geared toward a Juggernaut that's into high red maps and can afford 1 to 2x worth of gear, so you'll actually be taking a little bit different path for the Ascendancy versus someone that is a newer character. First we'll be taking Unflinching, and then Unstoppable, Undeniable, and Unbreakable. Again, this is for a more damage version of the Juggernaut. It's more balanced between damage and tanky. As far as the tree itself, you'll be going two-handed mace, so you'll be taking your mace and two-handed damage nodes. You'll also be going 3 war cries, so we'll be taking several of the war cry passive wheels too. And in my opinion, they're really worth the points to make the gameplay a lot smoother and faster. The closer you get to level 90, you'll start picking up Impale nodes, as well as some crit nodes to scale Undeniable in the Juggernaut tree. Also, make sure you have at least one jewel that has 0.3% mana leech, and I socket mine right here. With all those passives and the gear we'll talk about in a bit, I'm sitting at right under 300,000 DPS, before any of the war cries or Fist of War, and that also doesn't count the Earthshatter spike explosions. POB actually can't really calculate it that well, but I would say the damage is between 1 and 2 million DPS. Alright, so talking about DPS, let's go into the gym setups to see how we get all that juice. Obviously your main skill here is Earthshatter, which basically slams the ground in an AoE, then spreads out 5 spikes, which you can then explode for an insane amount of damage using any of your war cries. And for links and in order of importance, we have Earthshatter, Fist of War, Pulverize, Fortify, Melee Fizz, and lastly, Brutality. We dropped Shockwave for some extra damage, and it feels just fine losing that AoE damage, so it's no worries. Next we have our war cry setup being Seismic Cry, Intimidating Cry, Enduring Cry, and Second Wind for the cooldown recovery and extra use of the cries. When you're in combat, your war cry rotation will be seismic cry, then swing 2 times, then intimidating cry, then swing 3 times, and repeat. And use enduring cry anytime you need to blow up your spikes that's not on a normal cooldown rotation for the other 2. To me, this rotation-like approach to dealing damage is actually a ton of fun, and kind of reminds me like the World of Warcraft days where you have set rotations for playing your DPS characters. It really just adds an extra layer of engagement that has driven me personally to play this character a ton. Now on our boots we have Dash with Second Wind and Blood Rage, and lastly, also linked to Second Wind, is Steel Skin, which we have on our left clicked, so it automatically gives you a shield for 2000 damage every 3 seconds without even having to do anything, because that's your click button that you use to move anyway. For our helmet, we have Cast When Damage Taken Setup with Cast When Damage Taken, Immortal Call, Enfeeble, and Molten Shell. Enfeeble is level 1 because of the int requirements, and everything else can go up to level 20. For our buffs, we have Pride, Blood and Sand where we use Blood Sants, and then Dread Banner, and lastly we have a Vol Ancestral War Chief for extra boss damage. Now if you don't have the Tomb Fist gloves, which we'll talk about later, then you'll have 2 additional gem slots to use here, and I personally would recommend using a Cast on Death portal setup just to save you some extra time from running back if you ever die. And that's it for gems, nothing crazy here, it's actually all pretty straightforward. And that brings us to the last section here, gear. So most importantly is your weapon, and everything over 500 DPS will do pretty well. I personally have crafted this 600 DPS mace actually pretty easily, so I'm hoping that you guys can craft something similar as well. If you can't, then you can actually just fork out about 20C for a 550 DPS mace. Or the next upgrade for that, and even for me, would be a Marohi mace, and it's a little bit less damage, but it comes with a level 15 pulverized gem on it already, so it brings my DPS from about 270,000 up to 300,000, so actually quite a big chunk. After that, we have a generic 6-link body armor, which you can just go for life and resists, but do try and get a high armor chest because your ascendancy doubles that armor from your body armor. Mine's about 2,000 armor, so it actually turns that into 4,000 armor, so not too bad. One big upgrade here for 1 exalted is the brass dome, which has just under 6,000 armor, which then turns into 12,000 armor with the Juggernaut passive that doubles it, and that is pretty insane. And it also makes you not take additional damage from crits, so a really good option and something that I personally will be going for. For our gloves, we do have a 2 Abyssal Socket Tomb Fist with both a Murdering and Searching Eye Jewel socketed into it for the Intimidate and Maim on hit. I got mine for about 40C, but it does look like they're going for about 70C right now. For the boots, all you want to do is get life, resists, and move speed. Same with the rings and amulet, just life, resist, and then you do want physical damage to attacks on those. For the amulet though, make sure you do get one with intelligence and dexterity so you can use all your gems and your items. And for the belt, just life and resist, very simple. And then lastly, we have the Abyssus, which gives you crazy amount of damage. These you can get for anywhere between 20 and 40C depending on the rolls. Just make sure you get one with the increased physical damage taken mod as close to 40% as possible. The higher the number here, actually the worse it is. For flasks, we just have a life flask with bleed removal, and then we have Lionized Roar for more melee damage, and these are about 20 chaos. And then Atziris Promise for damage and leech, these are only about 2 chaos. And then for the expensive option, I don't have this, but you could go with a Bottled Faith for 11 exalts. Yeah, it's crazy expensive, but it does give you a ton of damage. I don't have one, and it's certainly not required, but if you got the money, why not? And then lastly, we just have a Move Speed Flask. And that about wraps up the build. Overall, I've had an absolute blast on this character. It was a super cheap character to get started, to getting into rev maps, and now that I'm moving towards Awakener level 8, I've gotten plenty of damage and survivability, and all for under about 2x, and I think that's pretty solid, especially for a two-handed melee character, which in the past have kind of always been poopy. Not this league though, they are super strong now. Anyways, next I am going to try out both Berserker and Chieftain and see how those go, and I will make an update video for those, so if y'all are interested in those, check back. It's going to have all of the slam skills on it as well, and I'm going to compare everything, so again, if you like this guide, do consider subscribing and check back for that video, and all my future POE guides in general. That's it for this one. Thanks everyone, and I will see y'all in the next one.